How's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, so today we're constantly being encouraged to optimize every aspect of our life. And on the surface, maybe, that prospect seems like a good thing. After all, who wouldn't want to be more efficient or healthier or smarter or just add in any comparative you want? Yet I would argue that beneath this modern allure and trend to optimize everything lies a collection of deep philosophical and existential problems. When optimization becomes the guiding and the ultimate goal of human existence, it risks flattening the richness of life in all sorts of negative ways. Okay, so how so? Well, first of all, what the mindset of optimization does is it reduces value to utility. In other words, it wrongly assumes that everything meaningful in life can and should be measured and improved or used more effectively as to serve some further end. I mean, for example, think about the practice of meditation today. Under the lens of optimization, even this sort of practice becomes instrumentalized or turned into a means, which is to say, it only gets valued for how it can serve to increase future productivity. You know, you take the allotted time out to meditate so you can get back to being even more efficient and more high yielding. And it's the same for other activities like let's say leisure time, or even for something like play. Under the mindset of optimization, leisure gets reframed as a kind of recovery time or mental break. That's to say, leisure gets reduced to the required relaxation needed for future productivity. It becomes nothing more than the recharging of batteries. And play, well, that takes the form of things like team building or corporate retreats or stress relief or creativity improvement sessions, activities which are all being tightly scheduled and tracked, of course. But what the mindset of optimization doesn't understand is that most of life's most important and richest activities and experiences, like love and friendship and leisure and contemplation and play, these things, they can't be reduced to the goals and performance metrics of optimization without an absolute corruption of their very nature. It's like having forced a square inside of a circle only because you've brutalized its shape. In other words, these are activities that resist metrics and that aren't subordinate to goals outside of themselves. Their value is intrinsic. Play, for example, is genuine play when it's open and when it's spontaneous and when it's voluntary and when it's meandering. In other words, when its domain or its space is not delimited or contaminated by strategic or measurable outcomes. To impose the logic of optimization on something like play undermines the simple but profound time needed for just being or just wandering around. And it's the same idea with respect to things like love or friendship. Relationships should not be judged by their utility, and they should not be driven by the metrics of engagement. And they're not things that need constant upgrading. They don't require the ethos of constant improvement like self-help projects. No, genuine love and friendships are ends in themselves, and their qualities of affection are unmeasurable. And they're about natural growth and mutual acceptance. Maybe another way of coming at this is like this. At its core, love is fundamentally constituted by fragility and imperfection. But when we treat it as something that needs to be optimized, we start to see flaws that, of course, need to be minimized. And so we begin to see the other person as a kind of project that needs to be improved, and ultimately as someone who has to be worthy of love through constant self-optimization. But all of this is, of course, a clear corruption of the real bonds of love, ones defined by things like unconditionality and acceptance and vulnerability. Okay, so what else? What are some other problems with this optimization mindset? Well, it's hard not to see how it doesn't just lead to perpetual dissatisfaction. After all, like the iPhone, what is every upgrade but the revelation of the need for another one after that, and for even yet more improvement? And that's how we experience life when we're driven by the imperative to optimize everything. We're always chasing the next upgrade, consumed by anxiety and exhaustion without ever feeling fulfilled. Speaking of exhaustion, the contemporary philosopher Byung-Chul Han argues that today we're no longer defined by something like external oppression, but instead by internal compulsion. This compulsion, in other words, to maximize and to produce and to constantly improve. Under this regime, we think we're free, but really we've become slaves to the imperative of self-optimization, something which for him ultimately has its source in market readiness. And the result of this self-exploitation is very, very clear for Han. It's burnout and depression. It's what Han calls a fatigue society, where we collapse under the weight of our own purported freedom. Okay, but maybe the most problematic thing about the mindset of optimization is that it erodes all authenticity. And to explain this, I can't think of a better person to turn to than the German philosopher Martin Heidegger. You see, Heidegger warned against treating human existence as a kind of technical object to be upgraded or engineered, which is something we see today, especially in these transhumanist aspirations, where the body gets viewed as a machine to be redesigned and the mind as a kind of chip to be upgraded, all with the goal of complete perfection and, of course, immortality. Yet for Heidegger, when we see ourselves this way, when we approach ourselves as a technical object to be optimized, then what we're really doing is we're optimizing away what really matters. For him, death and finitude and vulnerability, these aren't bugs or flaws that need to be eradicated. No, they're the very things that provide the conditions of a deep and grounded and meaningful existence. For Heidegger, when we aim for constant enhancement, we close ourselves off from that very truth. We become estranged from being itself. And in that estrangement, what we lose is not just authenticity, but any prospect of dwelling meaningfully at all. When life becomes the constant project of management and control and self-optimization rather than an open encounter with the mystery of existence, then there is no real life left to speak of. Bye for now.